Welcome to Congress in Context, your guide to making sense of Capitol Hill. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a pretty busy day, July 24th, 2025. We've got the Congressional Record, your submitted sources, and we're ready to unpack the key debates, the bills moving, the votes, basically what happened and why it matters to you.
Absolutely. It was definitely a packed day in the Senate. The House was quiet, but the Senate floor saw a lot of action. Passionate speeches, some really crucial votes, especially on nominees, and that ongoing push for the appropriations bills. Our job today, cut through all that noise, highlight what's critical, and help you understand the why behind the what's.
Okay, let's jump right in. Legislative highlights first. Thursday, July 24th, the Senate got started at 10 a.m. Senator Mullin was presiding. Like you said, the House wasn't in session then. They had a pro forma thing set for Friday, which is mostly procedural. But it sets up Monday, July 28th. That's when the Senate gets back to executive calendar number 85, Samuel Brown. Cloture vote set for 5:30 p.m.
Right. And cloture is key. Right. That's the mechanism to end debate, overcome a potential filibuster, and actually get to a final vote. But maybe the bigger picture this week, and it's something the majority leader has really been emphasizing, is this effort to get back to regular order budgeting.
Regular order, meaning individual spending bills, committee work, floor votes, the way it's supposed to work.
Exactly. Instead of those giant last-minute omnibus bills nobody has time to read. And it's significant because, as was pointed out, last year was a bust for appropriations on the floor. Not a single one made it, even with bipartisan committee support. This year, though, the Appropriations Committee, under Chair Collins, has already pushed out 4 bipartisan bills. That's a real signal.
And the big one getting attention is the Milliken VA bill, right?
Yeah.
Military Construction and Veterans Affairs,
Yeah.
HR 3944 for fiscal year 2026. That passed committee. What was the vote? 26-3? That's
pretty remarkable bipartisanship these days. It really is, especially on funding. It shows where priorities can align,
Yeah.
This covers vital stuff, veterans' health care, their benefits, plus construction at bases worldwide. Things like facilities for the new B-21 bomber out in South Dakota, National Guard facilities, too. It's critical infrastructure.
Makes sense. What else is moving on the appropriations front?
Well, there's the Ag Bill for FY 2026, hugely important for farming states, obviously. Funding for research, help for ranchers, the Farm Service Agency.
The nuts and bolts.
Exactly. And the Commerce Justice Science Bill, which funds law enforcement at all levels, federal, state, local. And interestingly, the legislative branch bill includes extra money for member security. That definitely reflects some current anxieties.
Yeah, you hear more about that. Okay, so appropriations are moving, albeit slowly. What about confirmations? That's always a battleground.
It was yesterday. The Senate actually confirmed 4 key administration nominees, and each one faced a filibuster attempt.
4 despite filibusters.
Wow.
Who were they?
Let's see. Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communications and Information, Treasury Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Crimes, a district judge for Eastern Missouri, and an assistant administrator at the EPA. These are really important roles shaping policy across the board, from, internet policy to fighting financial crime to environmental roles.
So the administration is getting its people in place, even with tight margins.
They are. And there was also that roll call vote confirming the Lohmeier nomination. That was 51 yeas to 46 nays. Very close.
51-46. That's tight. It shows the strategy, right? Push them through, even if it's by 1 vote.
Precisely. Staffing the government is the priority, even if it takes overcoming procedural hurdles every time.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's dive into some of the more intense political dynamics. That judicial nomination for the Third Circuit, Emil J. Bove III, that sounded contentious.
Oh, absolutely. The cloture vote to end debate on him passed, but just barely, 51 to 47. That sets up his likely confirmation, but the debate was fierce.
How fierce? What was being said?
Well, the Democratic leader went pretty hard against him, called him beyond unqualified and unworthy, even an existential threat to the rule of law.
Wow. Existential threat. Strong words.
Very. Accusations included that Bove, quote, made a name for himself by cleaning up Donald Trump's dirty laundry, called him a devout January 6 apologist. And there was a serious allegation that Bove reportedly told DOJ lawyers to ignore court orders and even deliberately mislead judges.
Okay, that's a heavy charge.
Definitely. The leader finished by asking how low can our Republican colleagues go in obeisance to Donald Trump? It really framed it as loyalty over qualification.
So how did the other side respond, the majority leader?
A very strong defense. He painted Bove as highly qualified Georgetown law, top 5% of his class, a decorated former prosecutor. He argued Bov took down violent criminals, drug traffickers, terrorists, said this whole thing was a politically motivated hit job simply because Bov worked for President Trump.
And the specific allegation about misleading judges.
The majority leader directly quoted Bov's sworn testimony. "I have never advised the Department of Justice attorney to violate a court order." So a direct rebuttal, framing it as a partisan smear.
Okay, so a classic, he said, on qualifications and conduct.
Pretty much. And the majority leader didn't stop there. He pivoted, brought up past Biden nominees the Democratic leader had supported. He described one judge as wanting a complete reimagining of policing and another Third Circuit nominee from 2024 as radical, opposed by police groups, and linked to a group calling cop killers freedom fighters.
So pointing out perceived hypocrisy or shifting standards.
Exactly. Basically asking, if you supported them, why is Bov uniquely disqualified? It raises that whole question about consistency in judicial fights.
And the broader picture. Did the majority leader comment on the overall nomination process?
Yeah, he called it a coordinated campaign of obstruction by Democrats. Said they've turned advice and consent into automatic opposition. He mentioned 138 nominees already approved by committees just stuck, waiting for floor time. Called it Senate floor purgatory.
Senate floor purgatory. That's a memorable phrase. Paints a picture of gridlock.
Definitely. Okay, another major point of friction. The Jeffrey Epstein files. That came up again.
Ah, yes. What was the latest there?
The Democratic leader was very vocal, called for a closed-door briefing for all senators. He cited a Wall Street Journal report he called damning, and he directly alleged Donald Trump's name appears in the files and that Trump lied about it. He brought up Trump's campaign promise to release the files.
Right, the drain the swamp promise.
Exactly. The leader suggested people are now angry, seeing that promise as, quote, total fiction. He ended by calling on the Justice Department to release everything and introduced a resolution, S-Res 325, pushing for that. He essentially accused the GOP of backing a cover-up.
Strong accusations. How did Senator Mullin respond? He was presiding, but did he weigh in?
He did, and he offered a different approach with his own resolution, S-Res 335. He agreed on wanting transparency, but disagreed on the method. Mullin stated the Trump administration is committed to releasing files and that Trump had already directed the AG, Pam Bondi at the time, to produce grand jury testimony.
But he had concerns about the Democratic resolution.
Big concerns about separation of powers. He emphasized the courts control the grand jury, the judges control the grand jury, not Congress, not the DOJ directly. He argued S-Res 325 was Congress trying to tell the FBI and the DOJ how they can proceed, blurring those lines.
And he thought routing it through Congress was a bad idea.
He basically said it would guarantee politicization. Okay. That's rhetorically. I am sure Congress has never once played politics with any information.
Okay, fair point.
His point was that this kind of move is what makes the public suspicious. He said, this is what smells like an elite cover-up, turning the accusation back, in a way.
So two competing resolutions, both claiming the mantle of transparency, but pointing fingers about process and politics.
That sums it up pretty well.
Okay, amidst all that conflict, was there any sign of bipartisanship or, common ground?
Actually, yes. There was a notable moment during Senator McCormick's maiden speech. He's from Pennsylvania.
A maiden speech. Always interesting. What did he focus on?
He talked about unity, surprisingly. He described this miraculous Pittsburgh summit held just last week at Carnegie Mellon. Get this. President Trump was there, cabinet members, CEOs from energy, tech, finance, labor leaders, politicians from both parties.
That's quite a mix. What came out of it?
According to McCormick, over $90 billion in new investments pledged for Pennsylvania, focusing on energy and AI. He framed it as an example of the bold, innovative leadership and, crucially, bipartisan cooperation needed for the U.S. to prosper and compete, especially with China.
So using a local success story to make a national point about working together.
Exactly. And he even gave a personal shout-out to his Pennsylvania colleague, Senator John Fetterman.
Really, despite their political differences.
Yeah. He called Fetterman his colleague and friend, mentioned they've worked together on things like fighting anti-Semitism, a little reminder that behind the scenes, relationships can sometimes bridge the public divides.
That's good to hear. Did McCormick talk more broadly about his vision?
He did. He talked about growing up near places like Bloomsburg, towns hit hard by economic change, and how President Trump connected with that struggle. He linked that to bigger national issues, the endless wars, the tragic rate of veteran suicide, the border situation, crime, the fentanyl crisis killing thousands in his state alone.
So connecting local pain to national challenges.
Right. And he used Pennsylvania's history, birthplace of the nation, Gettysburg, as a metaphor for America's resilience, our ability to, quote, get to the edge of the cliff and to pull ourselves back. It was a call to face tough tasks, but stay true to core American values. A message of hope, really, alongside the stark assessment of problems.
A very different tone from the floor debates. Okay,
Right.
what other major issues were raised?
Senator Klobuchar brought a really urgent focus to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Yeah, that situation remains dire. What specifics did she mention?
She quoted a pediatric doctor from Nasser Hospital saying, "There is no one in Gaza now outside the scope of famine, not even myself." Just gut-wrenching. And she cited the World Food Program reporting astonishing levels of desperation, like a third of people going multiple days without eating.
Those are horrifying statistics. What was her call to action?
An immediate humanitarian aid for civilians.
Mm.
An urgent return to a ceasefire to get hostages out and let Palestinians return home. And she stressed the ultimate goal, a lasting peace and a two-state solution. She was clear, support for Israel, yes, but we cannot continue to allow people to starve. Balancing security and humanity.
A critical, ongoing challenge. Now, let's talk about some specific bills introduced. These can sometimes fly under the radar, but have real impact.
Definitely. There are a few interesting ones. First, S-2426, the Equitable Community Access to Pharmacist Services Act.
Okay, what would that do?
Basically, it would let pharmacists bill Medicare Part B for certain services, similar to how doctors do. Think about getting tests, maybe even some treatments right at your local pharmacy, especially during health emergencies. It could really expand access for a lot of people.
Makes sense. Easier access is always good. What else?
S-2446, the Mental Health for Latinos Act. This tackles a specific crisis. It directs SAMHSA, that's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, to create culturally specific strategies. Reduce stigma, promote wellness, provide info on treatments tailored to the Latino community.
There's a real need for that.
The numbers are stark. Less than half of Hispanic adults with mental illness got treatment last year. Suicide rates have jumped dramatically. This bill is about removing barriers and sending the message that seeking help is okay. It's a sign of strength.
Hugely important message. Any others stand out?
Yes, S-2457, the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2025. This is a significant one.
Domestic terrorism. What's the approach here?
It authorizes specific domestic terrorism units within Homeland Security, Justice, and the FBI. Gives them clear mandates to monitor, investigate, prosecute. It requires regular, detailed reports, specifically tracking white supremacist incidents. Plus, mandatory training for law enforcement on spotting and investigating these threats.
And it addresses infiltration concerns, too.
Critically, yes.
Right.
It calls for an interagency task force to combat white supremacist and neo-Nazi infiltration within federal law enforcement and the military. Big implications for national security and civil liberties debates, too, of course.
A major effort to get ahead of internal threats. Okay, one more big one seems to be this Fight China Act. It was part of another bill.
That's right, Title 7th of H.R. 3944, the Milk and V bill we mentioned earlier, the Fight China Act of 2025.
So what's the fight here? Sanctions? Investment?
Both. It aims to protect U.S. national security by sanctioning certain Chinese entities, especially those linked to their military. And it wants to regulate American investments going into what it calls prohibited technologies in China.
Prohibited technologies like...
It's a broad list. Advanced semiconductors, certain AI models, especially for government use, or super high-powered ones, quantum computing, hypersonics, really cutting-edge stuff.
Yeah.
It would force U.S. persons to divest from some Chinese military companies and set up mandatory reporting for certain investments in these tech sectors in China. Heavy penalties for not complying.
So this is a serious bipartisan push to decouple strategically,
Yeah.
especially in defense-related tech.
Absolutely. It signals a very strong consensus, really, on confronting the economic and security challenges posed by China. This could reshape supply chains, investment flows, tech development for years.
Wow. Okay, so lots of heavy policy. Did the Senate take a moment for anything? Lighter? Anniversaries, maybe?
They did, actually. 2 resolutions. S-Res 336 celebrated the 100th anniversary of Pratt & Whitney.
The aerospace company.
That's the one. Recognizing their role in aviation and national defense over a century. And S-Res 337 marked the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Postal Service, founded way back on July 26, 1775.
250 years. It's easy to forget how long some of these institutions have been around.
It really is just part of the fabric.
Was there anything else on the resolution front?
Yes, one more. S-Res 338. This one focused on people with disabilities. It reaffirmed the goals of the Americans with Disabilities Act, independent living, economic self-sufficiency. But it also highlighted ongoing problems.
Like what?
Things like the bias towards institutional care and Medicaid, barriers faced particularly by people of color with disabilities. It pledged bipartisan work to improve access to services at home and in the community, boost job opportunities, and importantly, it specifically warned against any cuts to Medicaid.
So recognizing progress, but also the work still needed.
Exactly, acknowledging challenges while committing to solutions.
Okay, so looking ahead now, what should we be watching for?
Well, that appropriations process is key. They're pushing for regular order, but that September 30th deadline isn't that far away. Always potential for drama there. And we've got that vote set for Monday on the Samuel Brown nomination, continuing the focus on shaping the judiciary.
And those big bills we just discussed, the FGHT China Act, domestic terrorism prevention, those will be major policy debates moving forward.
Huge debates. They represent really significant potential shifts in foreign policy and domestic security priorities. And the fallout from judicial fights like the above nomination will continue.
Plus, the Epstein files issue doesn't seem to be going away.
Not likely. That demand for transparency, for accountability, it touches a nerve, and it'll probably keep bubbling up in different ways.
So for listeners wanting to follow all this, what's the best way to stay informed?
Congress.gov is really your best friend here. It's the official source.
Yep.
You can look up every bill and resolution we mentioned, S-2426, S-2446, S-2457, S-Res 325, 335, HR 3944. Read the actual text, see who sponsored it, track its progress.
And beyond just reading, how can people engage?
Your voice matters, seriously. If you care about veterans or mental health or China policy or anything else, contact your senators, your representative, tell them what you think.
And Congress.gov has that contact info too.
Yep. Easy to find right there. It makes it simple to reach out.
We covered a ton today. Intense debates, judicial fights, the Epstein files controversy, but also that appropriations work, the bills on health and security, even that call for unity from Senator McCormick.
It really runs the gamut, doesn't it? From high-stakes conflict to the steady work of governing.
It brings me back to that McCormick quote about America pulling itself back from the edge of the cliff.
It does. And maybe that leads to a final thought for everyone listening. We're bombarded with information, surrounded by division. How can digging into this process, understanding how Congress actually works, empower you, not just to be informed, but to maybe participate differently, to hold leaders accountable, to be part of finding solutions, contributing to that great task remaining before us, as Lincoln put it near Pennsylvania's Gettysburg?
A powerful question to consider. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Congress and context. We hope you feel more informed, maybe a little more engaged.
Stay curious, folks. Stay critical and keep learning.
Until next time, remember, understanding the process gives you power.